Since day one of Overwatch 2, we've had new characters and a lot of changes to the ultimates in the game, so I think it's about time that we do another ultimate tier list today. We are going to go over every character role by role, and we're going to cover which ultimates are the best in Season 3. If you want 2023 to be the year you finally break into GM, then you need to come and check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have hundreds of guides built by some of the best coaches in the game, designed specifically to help you soar up the Overwatch 2 ranked ladder, and they are all available for an absolute steal. Follow the link in the description below or go to GameLeap.com to get your subscription today. We are going to go right into the tank role first, and starting us off strong in the D tier is going to be Doomfist. I think that Doomfist has the worst ultimate in the game right now. It really just lacks the power that a lot of other characters have with their ultimates. A lot of them can change an entire team fight, and it's rare that I ever see a Doomfist do that. Moving up into the C tier, we have Whole Hog, and Whole Hog is a pretty decent ultimate. It's not great though. I mean, it really just doesn't have as much impact as any of the other tank ults except for Doomfist, and it's just not that good. They're still buffing it, and they might see some more changes to it, but for now, I'm leaving it at the C tier. Next, we're going to move up into the B tier, and starting us off in the B tier is going to be Monkey, Primal Rage. Monkey's ultimate requires a lot of skill and a lot of timing, and even then it's pretty easy to actually beat, but there are a lot of times that it does get a lot of value, and I think that it deserves a spot right in the middle of the road at the B tier. Next up in the B tier, we have Diva. Honestly, I think that Monkey and Diva ult are similar in a lot of ways. You have to have really good timing and really good awareness to get a good ultimate off, but Diva has a little bit of an edge because her ultimate can always just be used to remech, which is a really solid, consistent way of getting value. I don't think that's enough to bring it out of the B tier though, so she sits right here next to Monkey. Our next B tier ultimate is going to be Drunker Queen's ult, Rampage. The anti-effect on Rampage allows for Drunker Queen to sort of get in really quickly and start following up with a ton of picks, but I honestly don't think that it's that good with Kiriko being as solid as she is right now. Plus, with a little bit of awareness, it's actually really easy to dodge in general, so it's stuck here at the B tier for me. Sometimes it's value, but also doesn't a lot of the time. Our final B tier tank ultimate, and this one took me a lot of deliberation, but I think I finally settled on leaving it at the B tier, is Earth Shatter. It's a really strong ultimate and can get a ton of value, but it's also very dependent on what the other team is running. If they have a lot of mobility, especially verticality to their team, it's really hard to get any value out of Earth Shatter. But the potential on it is absolutely huge. It is an AoE stun that lasts for a decent amount of time, and you can get a lot of picks out of it, so I can't bring it any lower than the B tier. Moving on up into our A tier for tanks, we start off with Terra Surge from Orisa. Terra Surge has gotten better and better as time has gone on in Overwatch 2. They've given it a bunch of buffs, and now it's a really consistent way to win team fights, so I'm leaving it here at the A tier. And the next A tier ultimate is going to be Wrecking Ball's Minefield. They just gave it a buff to the arming time, which is a fantastic change for it. You can build it pretty quickly, and you can get a ton of value off of it, making it a very, very solid ultimate, and it is an A tier for sure. Our final A tier tank ult is going to be Graviton Surge, and this one is a long-standing, strong ultimate in the game. It can get a ton of value and set up a lot of team wipes, so it really just doesn't get much better than Graviton Surge. The only reason I have it this low is because there are a lot of mobile heroes that can avoid it pretty well right now. Moving on up into the S tier, we start things off with Ramatra. Even with the changes, this ultimate is honestly crazy. It lasts a huge amount of time, does a lot of damage, and makes him an absolute unit. It is very easy to win team fights with this ultimate, and due to Ramatra's insane damage output, you can actually build it pretty quickly, so I'm leaving it here at the S tier. Our final S tier ultimate is going to be Gravitic Flux, and I really think that this is a super underrated ult right now. Yes, you can cleanse and avoid damage upon landing, but it's also really good because it lifts them way up into the skybox where enemy DPSs can see their targets very easily and deal a ton of damage. And this allows for setting up a lot of picks even before they land and hit the ground when the cleanses and the immortalities come into play. Moving on into our next role, we have support, and starting us off down at the C tier is actually going to be Moira. Coalescence is an okay ultimate, but it really isn't that great. I mean, yes, you can get picks with it sometimes if the enemy is caught slacking or if they're really isolated, but honestly, it's not really as good as the other support ults. It's really lackluster comparatively. Aside from Coalescence, the support ultimates in the game right now are actually really strong, so we're going to skip past the B tier and move straight into the A tier where we get things kicked off with Baptiste. Baptiste Amplification Matrix is a really solid ultimate that gets a lot of value and especially can kill enemies that are unable to get around corners on time to escape it, but I still don't think it's in the best tier of support ultimates, so I'm gonna leave it right here at the A tier. Our next A tier support ultimate is gonna be Brigitte, and with the meta shifting to a more dive and quick kill sort of setup, it's definitely gotten a big power boost. It's a lot better than it once was. I still don't think it's the best defensive ultimate, but it's really solid and really versatile. Moving us up on into the S tier, we start things off with Transcendence. Transcendence is always going to be one of the best ultimates in the game. It's a very staple defensive one, and it's really solid for countering things like Dragon Blade or Blizzard, and that's always going to be the case. Regardless of the power level of Zen otherwise, the ultimate is always going to be solid. Our next support ultimate is going to fall into pretty much the same category, and that is going to be Lucio's Sound Barrier. Sound Barrier is arguably even better than Trance because it can stop one-shots from happening as well, but overall it's just a really solid defensive ultimate, and it can even be used as an offensive tool in a tight situation. Our next S tier support ultimate is going to be Kiriko's Kitsune Rush, and this is a really solid one for a lot of reasons. It gives a lot of damage boost, it gives a speed boost. I mean, it gives you just a really massive team buff in general. Definitely sits at the S tier as one of the best ultimates in the game, especially because it builds really quickly as well. Our next S tier support ultimate is going to be Ana's Nano Boost, and this one doesn't really need that much description, honestly. It sets up a lot of wicked combos in the game, whether that's Sojourn's Railgun or Genji's Dragon Blade. I mean, it's just a really solid support ultimate, and it sets up a lot of offensive wins. And finally, the last support ultimate, which I think has definitely been a bump up into S tier with the recent changes, is Mercy's Valkyrie. The recent Mercy changes made it so that Mercy actually deals more heals to characters that are crit health, and she gets a little bit of self-healing based off of how much healing she deals. And this overall makes her much harder to kill in the air and much more effective at keeping her team up, and this has actually been a major bump for her because she was already pretty hard to kill in the air and already pretty decent in keeping her team up with Valk. So definitely an S tier ultimate now, I think, in Season 3. Moving on into the final role, we have the DPS role, and starting things off in the C tier is going to be Reaper. Reaper just isn't what he used to be, honestly. He was much better when he had the DPS passive that gave him a movement speed boost upon getting an elimination, but now he's just kinda meh. A lot of the characters in the game are also very mobile right now or have stuns, which makes his ultimate not very powerful at all, so I'm leaving him here at the C tier. Our next C tier ultimate is actually going to be Bastion's ultimate, and you could make the case that this is actually a B tier, but I really don't think so. The only consistent way to get value with this ultimate is to hope that the enemy has an Ana or a Zen or otherwise slow moving hero that you can focus all your shots on and guarantee a pick on, but honestly, if they have a Mercy, it's probably going to get rezzed anyway. Not a fantastic ult. I'm leaving it here at the C tier. Moving on up into the B tier, we start things off with Hanzo's Dragons, and these are a very low risk and medium reward ultimate in general. They're way better if you can combo them with something that restricts movement like a Graviton Surge or an Orisa ultimate, but the fact that you can throw them through walls makes them, again, very low risk, and you can get a lot of value out of them, so definitely a B tier solid ultimate. Our next B tier ultimate is going to be Tracer's Pulse Bomb, and honestly, this used to be a much better ult, but with Kiriko Cleanse and Immortality and all the different ways that you can mitigate damage now, even Cassidy, when you pulse him, can just roll and use his damage reduction to survive now, so it's really not that great, but it can still get some value sometimes, so I'm leaving it here at the B tier. Our next B tier ultimate is going to be Pharah, and as long as you weave a rocket in before you use Barrage, you can usually secure at least one pick, even if you're going to end up dying as a result. It's solid and can sometimes win a team fight, but it really takes a lot to get to that point, so I'm leaving it here at the B tier. Next in the B tier is going to be Soldier's ult, and Soldier's ult is only really that intimidating when he has some form of damage boost like Nano or Kitsune Rush or even just a Mercy. He can absolutely catch you off guard with this if you're in a very open space and don't have any cover to get behind, but for the most part, his ultimates are just going to be a sort of zoning ultimate, if you will. Next up in our B tier, we have Widowmaker, and her ultimate is actually a lot better than people give it credit for. Being able to hit very quick shots on people who are turning corners or set your teammates up for different fights or different ults of their own is really good, and this ultimate requires no risk, much like the rest of Widowmaker, at all on your end, so it's really solid. I'd leave it here at the B tier because it's not going to win a team fight on its own, but it can definitely set one up. Our next B tier ultimate is going to be Cassidy's High Noon, and honestly, High Noon got a major buff with the damage reduction change. I think that that was a really big deal, and it actually has gotten me a lot more kills in my High Noon, so I can be a lot more patient. And worst case scenario, you can always just use it to reload if you're fighting a tank and fanning the hammer or something along those lines. So honestly, there's a few different ways to get value off of it. It's probably not going to win you team fights on its own, but it's pretty decent. Therefore, it stays right here at the B tier. Moving on up into the A tier, we start things off with Junkrat, and Tyre is a very good ultimate right now. The only thing you have to worry about is cleanse, but you can definitely get a lot of picks consistently with Tyre due to its mobility and its high damage output. Definitely a solid ultimate in the A tier. Next up in the A tier is going to be Symmetra's Wall, and this thing can actually negate a lot of ultimates like Visor, High Noon, Barrage, that kind of stuff, but it also sets up fights and pushes very well. It's pretty difficult to deal with a well-placed sim wall, so it's definitely an A tier pick for me, maybe even teetering on S tier. Our next A tier ultimate is going to be Dragon Blade, and I know know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but really you just need any form of damage boost and it becomes a really ridiculously strong ultimate. Nano Blade on a good Genji has always been pretty much a guaranteed fight win, and that has not changed with Overwatch 2, so definitely a solid ultimate. I definitely rank it in the A tier. It would be S tier if it didn't need the damage boost, but it kind of does, so A tier at least. Next up in the A tier we have Mei, and Blizzard has always been a really strong ultimate. It's really good for overtime fights and narrow hallway fights. You can definitely win a lot of team fights with Blizzard and set them up extremely well, so it's definitely an A tier ultimate. Next in the A tier is going to be Sombra's EMP, and even though Sombra herself isn't that strong, EMP is still obviously very powerful. Being able to disable the entire enemy team's abilities is a super strong effect, and it's a very valid counterplay to a lot of different powerful ultimates right now, so I definitely leave it here at the A tier. Our next A tier ultimate is going to be Echo's Duplication, and even though they made the change where she no longer gets the full HP bar of the tanks, she still is really strong, and this ultimate can turn a fight very quickly, especially because you just get another tank's abilities at the very least. So you can have something like an Echo duped Ramatra who's ulting and, you know, is able to block, and then it doesn't really matter if she doesn't have that much health. Overall, solid ultimate, can definitely win a lot of team fights. I'm leaving it at the A tier. Our final A tier DPS ultimate is going to be Torbjorn's Molten Core. Torb's ultimate falls into a very similar spot as Mei's Blizzard. It's an extremely good area denial tool, really good in overtime fights. The only main difference is that his ultimate is more of a straight up killing tool rather than a stunning tool. Very strong, can win a lot of team fights, so I'm leaving it at the A tier. Moving on up into the S tier for DPS ultimates, and these two should come at no surprise. We start things off with Sojourn. Sojourn's ultimate is extremely potent. Even with a little bit of damage boost, it can get a ton of picks very fast, and it can do so from across the map, so there's really not a lot to go against Sojourn's ultimate being S tier. She's already an extremely strong character even without it, and using it just sort of turns her into a Super Saiyan, so definitely an S tier ultimate. And the final S tier DPS ultimate is going to be Bob. Bob has always been strong throughout Overwatch 1 and 2, but honestly in Overwatch 2, having an extra tank essentially is a really big deal. He has a ton of health, does a ton of damage, and is able to set up combos for Astra headshot with his uppercut. And he's really important for the game's pacing because he can actually contest objectives, which is a really big deal. All in all, a well-placed Bob is an absolutely vicious ultimate, especially for area denial, and it will pretty much get value as long as you don't throw him off the map. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more educational Overwatch news and guide content, and I will see you all again very soon. Take care and peace. If you want 2023 to be the year you finally break into GM, then you need to come and check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have hundreds of guides built by some of the best coaches in the game, designed specifically to help you soar up the Overwatch 2 ranked ladder, and they are all available for an absolute steal. Follow the link in the description below or go to GameLeap.com to get your subscription today.